I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. I mean, you see stories about infidelity on TV, hear about it from friends, but you never really think it'll happen to you. My name is Jack, and I was living what I thought was a perfect life with my wife, Amanda. We'd been married for 5 years, and while we had our ups and downs, like any couple, we seemed solid. Or so I thought. It all started with little things. Amanda was more distant, spending late evenings working late at her office, a charity organization where she was the event coordinator. I'd try to be understanding, but her phone would buzz constantly next to me during dinner, and she'd shoot me those quick, anxious glances. It felt like she was hiding something. Yet I pushed it aside, convincing myself I was being paranoid. Then there were the unexplained absences. I remember one Thursday evening, I had planned a nice dinner, something to reconnect after a busy week. When I asked her to come home early, she told me she had to stay late to prepare for an upcoming fundraiser. I bought it, but that night I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The next morning I woke up to find her phone left unlocked on the kitchen table. This was my chance, right? I hesitated for a moment, feeling that familiar guilt creep in, but curiosity won. I picked up her phone, opened her text messages, and there it was, flirty exchanges with someone named Mark. My heart sank. Mark, I learned, was the CEO of the charity where she worked. The messages were filled with inside jokes, heart emojis, and even mentions of meeting up after work for discussions that felt more like something else. I felt sick. I dropped the phone back on the table, my mind racing. The first thought that hit me was anger, but it quickly spiraled into a whirlwind of confusion and betrayal. How could she do this to us? I confronted her that evening when she came home, my heart pounding, fists clenched, ready for a fight. When I asked her about Mark, she laughed it off. "Oh, come on, Jack. He's just a colleague. You're being ridiculous." But I pressed harder. "Those texts don't look like just colleagues, Amanda." She went from laughter to anger in an instant, accusing me of not trusting her. The way she twisted things made me feel like I was the bad guy. She said I was being insecure, that I needed to calm down and just trust her, but trust was shattered and I knew it. That confrontation opened a floodgate of emotions I didn't expect. I felt humiliated, furious, and utterly defeated all at once. I couldn't even look her in the eye. The next few days were a haze of anger and heartbreak. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I replayed every moment, every smile of hers that felt like a lie. I wanted to scream, to cry, to lash out, but I held it all in, trying to keep my cool. Then I made a decision. I wasn't going to let her or this Mark get away with it. I needed to find a way to expose this, to make them understand the gravity of what they had done. I started gathering evidence, piecing together all the little things that would show not just her betrayal but also his. What I didn't realize at the time was that this would lead me down a path I never expected, a path of intrigue and revenge that would expose far more than just a cheating wife. I was ready to fight back, to take control of the narrative, and to make them both feel the weight of their actions. After that initial confrontation with Amanda, my mind was racing with thoughts of how to expose her infidelity while ensuring that Mark, the charity CEO, also faced the consequences of his actions. I couldn't just sit back and let them continue their affair without repercussions. The plan began to take shape in my mind, fueled by the anger and betrayal I felt every time I glanced at her empty seat at the dinner table. I decided to dig deeper into Mark's world. He wasn't just a CEO, he was a public figure, one who had a reputation built on the charity's work and goodwill. I remembered seeing his face on posters and social media promoting events that Amanda often talked about. I had to find a way to use that to my advantage. It was time to do some investigation. I started by doing my research. I spent hours online, looking up everything I could find about Mark and the charity he ran. I discovered a lot of positive press about the organization, painting it as a beacon of hope in the community. But there were hints of discrepancies in their financial reports. Small red flags I hadn't noticed before, like vague mentions of donations and expenses that didn't quite add up. I saved every article, every mention, every detail that could paint a bigger picture. While I was busy digging up dirt on Mark, Amanda was still in her own little world, blissfully unaware of my growing knowledge. She continued to lie, insisting her late nights were all about work. I made sure to act normal around her, which wasn't easy. I put on a mask of indifference while inside I was plotting my revenge. I even made up a few excuses to avoid social gatherings where Mark would be present, wanting to keep my distance until I was ready to strike. Then, one evening, while going through some of Amanda's old boxes in the attic, I stumbled upon a journal she had kept shortly after our wedding. Flipping through its pages, I found entries filled with dreams of our future, love notes to me. But towards the end, things shifted. There were mentions of feeling trapped and stifled, along with hidden thoughts about Mark and how exciting he was compared to the mundane life we had together. It was like a punch to the gut, reading her words, realizing that she had been emotionally checked out for a while now. Every entry made me angrier. It felt like she had been planning this and had been dissatisfied long before the affair started. It became clear this was about more than just physical attraction. It was about her seeking validation and excitement that she felt she was missing with me. I couldn't let her get away with just hurting me. She needed to face the reality of her decisions. As I pieced everything together, I decided to turn my findings into a plan. I started documenting everything, taking screenshots of the text conversations between Amanda and Mark, gathering evidence of financial discrepancies in the charity's reports. I even reached out to a few friends who had been involved with charitable organizations, asking about their experiences and any insight they might have about Mark's operations. What I found was unsettling. People had vague suspicions about where donations were going, and some mentioned rumors of large sums disappearing without explanation. With every bit of evidence I gathered, my resolve grew stronger. I knew I had to do it strategically. I didn't just want to hurt Amanda. I wanted to ensure that Mark faced the consequences for manipulating trust within the charity he ran. I started drafting a letter, outlining everything I had found, ready to send to the board of directors of the charity. It wouldn't just be a personal vendetta. I was about to take a stand against a man who thought he could get away with embezzlement while playing the role of a saint. The night before I planned to send the letter, I sat in our dimly lit living room, the weight of my decision heavy on my shoulders. I thought long and hard about the repercussions. Would this ruin Amanda's life? Would it tarnish the charity's reputation? But then I remembered her laughter during our last argument, how she dismissed my feelings. She had made her choices, and now she and Mark were going to face the fallout. I pressed send on the email, feeling a rush of adrenaline. This was it, the beginning of my revenge, a way to expose them both and make them realize the severity of their actions. I was ready to watch everything unravel. The moment I hit send on that email, a mix of fear and satisfaction washed over me. I felt an odd sense of power, as if I had taken control of a situation that had spiraled out of my hands. But there was also an undeniable weight that came with knowing I had set a chain of events in motion that could irrevocably change lives, including my own. In the days following that fateful email, everything felt surreal. Amanda continued her routine, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. I watched her go about her day, the facade of normalcy becoming more difficult to maintain. She was still the same woman I had married, yet I could see the cracks in her armor. The small lies, the nervous glances, and the way she clutched her phone a little too tightly when I was around. It all felt different now. I almost felt sorry for her, but the anger bubbled to the surface every time I thought about her betrayal and the way she had dismissed my feelings. Then came the day I had dreaded and anticipated at the same time. I woke up to the news that the charity was under investigation for financial misconduct. A reporter from a local news station had gotten wind of the allegations I had submitted and was doing a piece on the charity's supposed mismanagement of funds. I couldn't help but feel a surge of triumph. I had expected the board of directors to take at least a week to respond, but clearly, they took these matters seriously. As the day progressed, news spread like wildfire. I sat at work, glued to updates on social media and news sites. My stomach turned with every detail I read. Mark was being interviewed, his face pale and his words stumbling. His reputation was already starting to crack, and I felt a dark satisfaction watching the facade of a benevolent leader crumble. That evening, when Amanda came home, the tension was palpable. She walked in with a nervous energy, her phone glued to her ear as she paced back and forth. The moment she hung up, I knew it was time to confront her again. "Did you see the news?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Yeah, I did." "What a shame for the charity, huh?" I replied, keeping my tone casual, but I could feel my heart racing. I needed her to connect the dots. She frowned, noting my tone. "It's just some ridiculous claim, they'll sort it out. I mean, it's not like Mark would ever do anything fraudulent." "Isn't it funny how that works? You're so sure of him. It's almost like you have a special connection with him." I shot back, my words dripping with sarcasm. Her eyes widened, and I could see the realization dawning on her. "What do you mean by that?" she asked, her voice suddenly firm. I decided to lay it all out. "I mean, I know about the texts, Amanda. I know about you and Mark." Her expression shifted from confusion to anger, and for a moment I thought she might deny it again. But instead she seemed to shrink, her bravado fading. "What do you want me to say, Jack? That I was unhappy? That I was looking for something more?" She spat, her voice laced with bitterness. "I want you to admit that you hurt me and that you were willing to ruin your marriage for some thrill," I replied, feeling the weight of my own words. Her defenses crumbled, and for the first time I saw a crack in her shield. She looked vulnerable, and a part of me wanted to reach out to comfort her, but I knew better. "You don't understand. I was just trying to feel alive again," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. I felt a wave of sadness mixed with anger wash over me, but I pushed it aside. "You've made your choices, Amanda. You and Mark will have to face the consequences of your actions. It's not just about you anymore." As she stood there, teetering on the edge of regret and defiance, a sense of calm washed over me. I was no longer the man who felt powerless and betrayed. I had taken my stand, and it felt empowering. But there was still more to come. The fallout from the investigation would not just impact Mark's career. Amanda was also in the crosshairs, and I couldn't wait to see how she would handle it. In the days that followed, I expected to see her grow more anxious as news outlets began covering the charity scandal more heavily. Each time she got a notification on her phone, I could see her heart race. I wished I could capture that moment of her realization, the moment she understood that her choices had consequences beyond just our marriage. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she had done, and I was determined to make sure that she did. But I also knew I was dancing on a tightrope. The moment I had let go of the anger and began my plans for revenge, I had also opened up a new chapter in my life. I was ready for the outcome, whatever it might be. I was about to witness the unraveling of everything Amanda had built, and I was not going to miss a moment of it. As the scandal surrounding the charity grew, so did the tension in our home. News outlets were relentless, covering every detail of the investigation. Mark's disheveled appearance during interviews became a running joke on social media, but the real punch came when I learned that the board had suspended him pending the investigation. The tides were turning, and along with it, Amanda's mood shifted dramatically. She was no longer the confident woman I had married. Instead, she was anxious and frazzled, often pacing the living room, muttering to herself. I watched her unravel, and part of me felt a bittersweet joy at seeing her discomfort. But another part, the part that still cared for her despite everything, felt a deep pang of sadness. This was not the woman I had known. She was a shadow of her former self. One evening, as I sat with my laptop open, watching the news coverage, Amanda suddenly burst into tears. "It's all my fault. I should have never gotten involved with him," she sobbed, her voice cracking. "I thought it would be just fun, something to get me out of this rut, but now look at what it's done. I've lost everything." I looked at her, feeling a strange mix of empathy and vindication. "You chose this, Amanda. You made your bed," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You wanted excitement, and now you're facing the fallout." She met my gaze, her eyes filled with desperation. "I never meant to hurt you, Jack. I thought I could keep it separate, that it would affect us." The sincerity in her tone was almost convincing, but I knew better. "You can't have it both ways. You wanted the thrill of an affair and the stability of our marriage. They don't coexist. As the investigation continued, I realized Amanda had begun to distance herself from me even further. I watched as she spent more and more time at the charity's office, trying to salvage what was left of her reputation and the organization. Her desperation to clear her name felt futile to me. Rumors were swirling and her connection to Mark was too deep to ignore. One night I decided to confront her again. I needed to know if she was still in touch with him. "Are you still talking to Mark?" I asked, my voice low. She paused, looking away, and this was all the answer I needed. "What's it matter to you, Jack? It's not like we're functioning as a couple anymore," she shot back defensively. "I'm just trying to figure out how to clean up this mess." Her words stung, but I couldn't let her deflect the blame. "You mean your asterisk mess. You're the one who chose to betray our marriage," I replied. "You don't get to act like a victim now just because things are getting tough." There was silence for a moment, and in that stillness I saw a flicker of shame in her eyes. "I know I messed up. I thought if I tried to fix it with Mark, then maybe I could fix everything else too," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Does it even matter to you how this affects me? Do you think I want to see you risk everything for someone who's probably not even going to come through this unscathed?" I pressed, feeling a mixture of anger and heartbreak. I know, I'm sorry," she cried, throwing her hands up in frustration. "I just didn't think it would go this far. I didn't think it would blow up like this." For a moment, I saw the woman I had fallen in love with, the one who was scared and vulnerable. But I quickly reminded myself that I had to stay strong. This was her reckoning. "You keep saying you did realize the consequences, but that's exactly the problem. You need to face what you've done, Amanda. You need to own it." The days continued to roll by, and the charity was in chaos. Staff members were jumping ship, and donations dwindled as the news coverage turned more negative. Amanda's phone calls were constant, filled with frantic conversations about how to manage the fallout. I watched as her desperation grew, knowing that my decision to expose Mark had sent ripples through her life. Then one evening when she came home late, her eyes were red and puffy. I could tell she had been crying. "The board wants to speak with me tomorrow," she said, her voice shaking. It was clear that they were holding her accountable for her role in the situation. I felt a pang of guilt, but I quickly shoved it aside. "What do you mean? About what?" I asked, feigning ignorance. "They want to know what I knew and when I knew it. They're questioning my integrity," she replied, her voice breaking. "They're making me out to be complicit. Maybe you should have thought about that before getting involved with him," I said, feeling the anger bubbling up again. "You brought this on yourself, Amanda. You'll have to deal with the consequences." She stared at me, tears streaming down her face. "I never meant for it to get this far. I just wanted to feel alive again. I thought I could manage it all. I didn't realize how deep this would go." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. "You had every chance to be honest with me, Amanda. You chose to betray me instead. Now you have to face the music, and I'm not going to save you from it." In that moment, I knew I was no longer the man she could manipulate with her tears. I had made my choice to stand up for myself, and I would see this through to the end. The fallout from her affair was just beginning, and I was ready to witness the full extent of her consequences. As I went to bed that night, I felt a strange sense of peace. I was taking control of my life again, and while I didn't know what lay ahead, I was determined to see it through. The game was far from over, and I was ready for whatever came next. The day of Amanda's meeting with the charity board arrived, and the air was thick with tension. I could feel her anxiety radiating off of her as she paced back and forth in our living room, running her fingers through her hair. She was a bundle of nerves, and honestly, a part of me felt a bit of satisfaction knowing she was finally facing the consequences of her actions. But another part of me, the part that had loved her so deeply, felt an unsettling mix of sympathy and guilt. "Amanda, you need to be honest with them," I said, trying to offer some semblance of support. "You can't hide behind lies anymore. Just tell them everything." "Everything," she echoed, her eyes wide with fear. "You think I should just lay it all out there? That'll ruin me for good. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to cheat," I replied, my tone sharper than I intended. I was trying to be supportive, but her unwillingness to take responsibility was infuriating. She shot me a look that was somewhere between anger and despair. "You don't get it, Jack. This isn't just about me anymore. My whole career is on the line." I sighed, the weight of our situation pressing down on both of us. "You're right, but you made choices that led you here. It's time to own them." She nodded, but I could see the defeat in her posture. With a heavy heart, I watched her leave for the meeting, unsure of what to expect. Would she be honest? Would she try to shift the blame onto Mark? As the hours dragged on, I found myself pacing the apartment, anxiety clawing at my insides. I had sent the email exposing Mark and his mismanagement of funds, but I had no idea how much Amanda had been involved. I couldn't help but wonder if she would try to protect him, to shield her lover from the consequences of his actions. Finally, around mid-afternoon, she returned home, her face pale and drawn. Without saying a word, she slumped onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. My heart sank at the sight of her. "What happened?" I asked cautiously, sitting across from her. "I told them everything," she murmured, voice muffled. "I told them about our marriage, about Mark, about the affair." Oh God, I felt a mix of dread and relief wash over me. "And they were furious," she said, lifting her head to meet my gaze. Her eyes were filled with tears. "They fired me on the spot. I'm out of a job, Jack, just like that." My heart raced as I processed her words. She was now jobless and exposed, but I knew that this was the reckoning she needed. "What about Mark?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "He's gone too. They're investigating him for embezzlement and they're going to press charges," she said, her voice breaking. "This whole thing is a mess." I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and empathy. She had lost everything, and while part of me felt vindicated, another part felt the pain of seeing her like this. "You should have thought about this before you got involved with him," I said gently. "This is the result of your choices." I know," she cried, her hands trembling. "But I didn't think it would come to this. I thought I could manage it all." "That's the problem, Amanda. You thought you could have it both ways," I replied, frustration bubbling to the surface. "And now look where you are." "I'm so sorry, Jack. I messed up so badly," she sobbed, her voice raw with emotion. "I wish I could take it all back. I never meant to hurt you." It was hard to see her like this, and for a moment I felt a flicker of sympathy. "You can't undo what you've done. You need to figure out what's next for you," I said firmly. As the days passed, the reality of our situation began to sink in for both of us. Amanda was unemployed and facing the aftermath of her choices, while I felt a strange sense of freedom from the burden of her lies. I could see that she was genuinely remorseful, but I couldn't overlook the fact that she had shattered our marriage. We began to have conversations about what the future held, but every time she tried to apologize, I had to remind her of the depth of her betrayal. "You put us here, Amanda. You need to take responsibility for your actions," I would say. One evening, as we sat across from each other at the dining table, she finally broke down. "I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know if I want to fix it," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Then what do you want?" I asked, feeling both frustrated and concerned. "I want to find a way to move forward, but I don't know what that looks like without you. I've lost everything, Jack." Hearing her say that was a bitter pill to swallow. I could see the weight of her regret, but I had to be honest with myself too. "You need to figure out what you want for yourself first. I can't be your safety net anymore," I said firmly, knowing that I had to prioritize my own healing. The truth was, I had been through so much pain and betrayal that I was starting to question if our marriage could ever be repaired. I had to protect my heart, to decide if I could trust her again after everything that had happened. As Amanda continued to grapple with the consequences of her actions, I began to focus on my own future. I started looking into new job opportunities and exploring hobbies I had put aside while trying to support her career. I felt like I was reclaiming my life, and that gave me a sense of purpose amidst the chaos. But I could still see Amanda struggling, and part of me wanted to reach out to her, to help her find a path forward. There were moments when I almost caved, when I felt the old love and connection pulling at my heartstrings. But I couldn't forget the pain she had caused and the betrayal that had shattered our foundation. As we moved into the next phase of our lives, the question of whether or not we could find a way back to each other loomed large. But for now, We were both lost in the aftermath of our choices, each trying to navigate a new reality. The storm had passed, but the scars would remain for a long time to come. The weeks turned into a month, and while the initial chaos of Amanda's dismissal and the fallout from the charity scandal began to settle, both of us were still navigating the emotional wreckage. I could sense the shift in our dynamic. The tension had transformed into an uneasy coexistence. We were no longer husband and wife, at least not in the way we used to be. We were two people trapped in the aftermath of betrayal, each trying to find our footing. Amanda spent her days searching for new employment, but the charity scandal cast a long shadow over her career. Every time I saw her scrolling through job postings, I felt a pang of sympathy mixed with distant anger. Part of me wanted to help her, but the other part reminded me that she had put us in this situation. One evening, she approached me with a heavy heart. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, Jack," she began, her voice soft. I looked up from my laptop, the weight of her words immediately capturing my attention. "About what?" I asked cautiously. "About us. About everything." She took a deep breath, looking vulnerable and exposed. "I know I messed up, and I don't expect you to forgive me easily, but I want to try to make things right. I want to rebuild the trust we lost." I felt my chest tighten at her words. The thought of rebuilding what we had felt both daunting and deeply appealing. "Amanda, it's not that simple," I replied, careful not to let my emotions overwhelm me. "You broke my trust in a way that's hard to repair. It's going to take time." "I understand that," she said, her eyes glistening with tears. "I really do, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I've seen how my actions impacted you, and I want to be better. I want to earn back your trust." That part of me that still cared for her was torn. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, but years of pain and betrayal weren't easily forgotten. "What does that even look like, Amanda? Trust doesn't just come back overnight. You have to understand that," I replied, attempting to be firm while still giving her space to express herself. "I know. I'm not asking for a magic fix," she said, her voice steadier now. "But I want to go to couples therapy. I want to work through this together, if you're willing. I need to understand why I did what I did, and I want to help you heal too." I sat in silence, weighing her words. Therapy could be a step toward healing, but part of me was still skeptical. Could we really find a way back to each other after everything that had happened? "I need to think about it," I finally said, my voice steady. "It's a big commitment, and I can't promise that I'm ready." "Take your time," she replied softly. "I just wanted to put that out there. I'm not going anywhere, and I want to make this work." As the days passed, I found myself reflecting on her proposal. The thought of therapy was daunting, but I also recognized that there was a part of me still clinging to the idea of salvaging our relationship. We had shared years of memories, laughter, and love. Could we really throw that all away? One evening, while sitting in my favorite chair with a glass of whiskey, I made my decision. I walked into the living room where Amanda was watching TV, and I took a deep breath. "I'm willing to try therapy," I said, my heart racing, "but I need you to know that it's going to be a long road. I can't just forget what happened." Her expression shifted from surprise to relief and then to gratitude. "Thank you, Jack. I promise I'm committed to this," she said, her voice filled with emotion. We scheduled our first session with a therapist who specialized in couples dealing with infidelity. On the day of our first appointment, I felt a mixture of nervousness and hope. Could this truly lead to healing, or would it just deepen the wounds we both carried? During our sessions, we delved into the cracks in our relationship that had allowed infidelity to seep in. Amanda opened up about her feelings of inadequacy, her fears of being trapped, and how she had mismanaged her need for excitement. I spoke about my feelings of betrayal and how deeply her actions had cut me. It wasn't easy, but with each session, I felt a flicker of understanding between us. As the therapy sessions continued, we began to communicate more openly. I could see that Amanda was genuinely trying to understand the impact of her choices, and I was learning to express my feelings without the weight of anger always clouding my judgment. It was a long and challenging process, but slowly we started to rebuild. Months later, as I look back on everything that had happened, I realized that the pain of infidelity doesn't just disappear. It lingers, reshaping the way I view trust and love. But in the space of healing, I've also found a renewed sense of hope. Amanda and I are still learning, still trying to navigate this new chapter of our lives, but we're doing it together. I've learned the importance of honesty, both with myself and each other. I've learned that rebuilding trust is possible, but it requires vulnerability and hard work. Most importantly, I've learned that even in the depths of betrayal, there's a chance for redemption if both parties are willing to fight for it. As we continue to walk this path, I carry the lessons of our past with me, determined to forge a future where love can thrive again, even if it looks different than it once did. We may never be the same couple we were before, but perhaps we can become something new, something stronger. Only time will tell, but I'm willing to find out, one step at a time.